Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books with Genghis Khan, and today I just want to chat about the various rewards that rereads can bring to us. And I have exactly 7 different types of rewards that a reread might provide, and I'll get into all 7 of those. And I got the idea for this video because I had just finished up a reread of the first 5 Temeraire books by Naomi Novik, and I really just had a wonderful time with that reread, coming back to those books after about 5 years away after I'd read them the first time. And I had gone into this year with just a TBR that had exploded to just ungodly proportions. I am sitting on about 600 physical books that I have yet to read, and most of those are just high priority for me. New authors, new series that I feel like I should have already read and that I will hopefully really love. And I'm sitting on hundreds of these priority books, and there's thousands that are on my radar, that are on my TBR. And, I don't even know if I'm going to have time to get to these in my lifetime at this point. I'm certainly never going to have time to read all the books I'll ever want to. And so it can be tough to prioritize rereads or to make time for them, and to feel not so guilty about returning to something when you have so many unread books on the TBR. And so I want this video to serve as a hopeful kind of reminder of all the different reasons why it might be so nice to do a reread, and to hopefully make you feel a little less guilty about it if you have the inclination to do it, or if you're in the mood for a reread and you're not sure if you want to give yourself permission to do that. Just go for it. I want to hear in the comments about some of your best reread experiences that you've had, and I've had a handful myself over these last few years, so I'll get into those as we go through. What's interesting is that not every book or series is going to offer all of these different rewards. Some of them might only offer just 1 or 2 of them, while others might offer almost the whole suite of these. And I'll mention one that I have not reread yet, but that I'm already psyched to, where I think it might have basically all of these rewards. I'll mention that at the very end of the series that I think might offer every single one of these. But I've had great rereads where maybe just one of these was the true highlight. So I'll try to bring those up as we go. Now, the first reread reward is just the thrill of going on the ride again, just because you loved it so much. And I'm thinking about when you're at a theme park. Maybe it's been a few years since I've been on roller coasters, but I used to love going, and I would get off a roller coaster that I loved, and I would immediately want to just do it again, get back on the line, go for it again. And this was not because going on again would provide me any sort of surprise. I knew exactly what to expect, but I just wanted to have that same experience again and have that same fun. I knew I loved it. It was thrilling. Let me just go again. And that is what I did early on in my reading renaissance, when I got back into fantasy and science fiction. When I read the 3 Body Problem trilogy by Cixin Liu, I loved book 2 and 3 so much that within a year after finishing the trilogy, I went back and just reread The Dark Forest and Death's End. So I skipped over book 1 because I just wanted to relive the experience of book 2 and book 3, which are just 2 of my favorite reads of all time. So yeah, no surprises, but just like when you get right back on the roller coaster, you might be looking forward to certain twists and turns that were particularly thrilling, and just knowing what's coming, you have that expectation of knowing there are some awesome parts of this ride that are coming up. So yeah, riding again, even when everything is still extremely fresh, can still be a blast of a time. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum is when so much time has passed from your first read or your last read that reading it again is like it's completely new. And I am just thinking about how I read Hyperion about 13 years ago when I was in college, and I know that I really loved it, but I basically remember none of the details of this. I remember the overall structure and the premise, but truly, like, none of the details. And if I picked this up again, it would truly be like I was reading it anew. So as our memory for a book fades, we could reread to basically have the experience all over again, knowing that probably a good chance of it being a hit if it was for us earlier, but also it could be interesting to see at a different point in your life kind of the different experience you might have with it, or different kind of things you might notice or take away from it at different points in your life. So that is a very interesting kind of reward you might find for favorite books. And related to that is very useful if your memory for a book isn't great, to catch up on the details if you had later books in the series that you wanted to get on with, as I do with this one, because I never read the last two books in the series, the Endymion books. So if I ever want to go on to those, I'd probably do a reread of those first two and have a new experience with it all over again. The next kind of reread reward is the kind where it is just comfort food to return to that story for you, where it is like curling up next to a fire in a warm, fuzzy blanket. And that is what returning to the Temeraire books felt like for me recently. I wanted to just fit in some reads between some other really chunky, heavy kind of series reads I was in the middle of, and I just didn't feel like I was in the mood for just doing a new series or a new author, and the mental energy it would take to kind of just get used to new writing style and world building and characters. And returning to this was just so comforting for me. Returning to characters that I loved, had so many positive associations with from my first read. It was so easy to get immersed right away back in these books. And also, there's, when you know what's coming and you kind of know the bad things you don't have to dread because they don't end up happening, and even knowing maybe the less happy things that do occur, you're just knowing those all ahead of time can, I think, reduce the tension of the read. And for instance, that first time I read Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the final book, I was really just so tense the entire time about what was going to happen, what characters might die. And when I reread that later, I could just kind of just have a more comforting time with it, not be so tense. And it's fun having that much tension and being that invested, but could also be nice to just have a more easygoing time of it. And if you're in the mood for that, that I think could be one of the most rewarding parts of a reread, where it's just characters you love, story you love, writing style that you just jive with so much that falling back in is just your most delicious comfort food that you could possibly imagine. So I know lots of people do rereads of their favorite series often, probably for that reason most of all. The next kind of reread reward is specifically around our greater attachments to characters after we've read books and spent lots of time with characters over the course of a series. And you have an appreciation for their whole kind of growth over time, their character arcs that can take different twists and turns. And so when you return to the beginning of a series, say if you've read all 17 Dresden novels, and then return to the very beginning at Stormfront, like I did last year, it's just so interesting because the experience you had at the beginning of a book one or standalone compared to what it's like for you coming back and seeing these characters, you just have such greater investment in them from the very first page. And seeing Harry before he's gone through so much is just kind of induces this wistfulness and this kind of greater connection to this character's early journey that I didn't have initially. And just when you see other characters pop up on the page like Murphy and Michael for the first time and seeing them interact, there's so much more meaning in those interactions because I've spent so long with these characters and those relationships, seeing them develop over time in such impactful ways, then just leads me to be so much more invested with these earlier books. And then even real secondary characters that pop up in different early books where you don't really know that they're going to become maybe really main characters in the series or really important side characters, and just seeing them and what they're doing early on is just kind of provides you an extra thrill knowing that they take on a larger role later. So yeah, just knowing the character arcs and growth, spending time with characters means that when you come back, you are just so much more immediately invested in them. So a great reread reward that would basically be, I think, on offer with any reread you might have. This next reread reward might be one of my personal favorites in terms of adding enrichment to my reading experience of a book, and that is when you have a kind of mystery box of a plot that is revealed to you throughout a book or series, and there was just this extremely well constructed plotting over multiple books where major plot reveals just kind of recontextualize everything that came before in interesting or crucial ways. And I experienced this when I reread the Mistborn trilogy. So I kind of binged all of the Cosmere books that were available to me when I got back into fantasy in 2018. And then before my TBR just exploded, I maybe read a couple other things, but then I was hankering to get back to Sanderson again, since I was a big rereader growing up with Harry Potter. And so just I didn't think twice about rereading a bunch of years ago before my TBR just got out of control. And I'd so enjoyed the Mistborn books that I wanted to give them another go, but through a different format, because I reread them by audio. So that's another reread award that I didn't even think about. So yeah, if you do something in print or by audio, you can do a whole nother format and get a whole different interpretation of the text. So maybe we'll add in that as an eighth reward right there. But when I first read the Mistborn trilogy, I was so engrossed. I loved it the first time through, but there are so many really interesting things going on behind the scenes, and that only get revealed at the end of each book and then at the end of the series and through even other things like Mistborn's Secret History. And knowing all of those going into the reread completely changed the read on second time around. So I was just noticing so many things that I just did not register the first time around, and that I could not have registered based on the information that I had at the time. And so this book, it almost felt like a literal completely different book, and just everything that you know is going to be revealed and that's coming is continually getting you to notice certain things. So it's just like, you know, you're continually Leo DiCaprio in that GIF, and spotting things that are important. And this is where authors who really do a lot of planning and foreshadowing, you get a lot of little rewards with things that get seeded early on or that get hidden in plain sight. And Sanderson, I think, is just fantastic at doing that and offering those immense reread rewards because of plot reveals and just knowing the kind of what's underneath the mysteries. Another kind of reread reward is being able to more easily and quickly just get immersed in the story through your greater understanding of the novel's context or the series context. So I'm thinking of Malazan Book of the Fallen. So you're just dropped right into the middle of this giant worldwide spanning conflict, and you're not given too much clear exposition about what's going on. Who are the different factions? What's the history behind everything? How does the magic work? So over the course of the 10-book series, you gain all of that understanding over time. But a lot of people are just on kind of just wild ride on book one, just trying to grasp scene to scene, like what's going on here? What's at stake? What are the motivations of everyone? And I think I really want to give book one, especially, a reread soon, while the details on the rest of the series are pretty fresh, because that would allow me to just see so many different things that I missed the first time, and just kind of just be more comfortable about everything that's happening. I think I'd be able to just enjoy the early Malazan stories more, and probably also catch on to a lot of things that are going on in the storytelling and catch more of the depth behind it when I'm not just kind of really trying to flounder to keep afloat and just kind of scene to scene try to grasp what's happening. I really enjoyed my first read of Gardens of the Moon, but I do think that reread would be quite special. And finally, a last reread reward might be that your familiarity with the plotting and the kind of overall story arcs that, you know, are keeping you in such suspense and that are occupying a lot of your brain space as you're reading a story, your familiarity with all of those might open you up to notice more subtle aspects of the writing that I just maybe wouldn't have noticed the first time around. So I'm thinking about something like reading Realm of the Elderlings or the Live Ship Traders trilogy. So when I recently read this for the first time, I was so caught up in the plot and just what was going to happen and what each of the characters was going to do next that I was racing through these because I was so gripped by the story. But I think I did not have the time or the patience to try to appreciate maybe a lot of the beauty of the prose on a word choice level or a sentence by sentence level. And, on a reread, I wouldn't be so concerned with just racing to find out what's going to happen, but I can really slow down with the writing, try to take in more of the wisdom in the writing and the prose, and catch more of the subtext, and maybe spend time with some of the less propulsive chunks, like parts that are more descriptive or that are less relevant to the overall plot, and just try to really sink in to every bit of the writing and appreciate more of what the author's doing in a more subtle way. So I think Robin Hobb might offer a lot of those rewards if I ever get around to rereading these. Now, I know people are just in love with rereading Realm of the Elderlings, and I think it's because Hobb might offer basically all of these rewards that I was talking about. There are some plot reveals that happen throughout Live Ship Traders that would truly make this whole experience different, kind of like the Mistborn trilogy was so different on reread for me. And then the attachments I've already felt to characters. It took me a little while in book one to get attached to a lot of the characters, but after the time I spent with them over the trilogy, I'd just be immediately attached and invested in what's going on. So I could just sink in. It'd be a comfort read for me since I love it so much. I love the world building, the writing style, the characters. Just also kind of with details a little fresh, be able to catch a lot of the foreshadowing, the little seeds of things that are coming later. And for things that have fled, I'd be able to relive them and kind of just have a new thrilling ride all over again. And so I think a real rereading sweet spot for me is maybe a couple of years after I read for the first time. So maybe not all of the details are still there. Some have fled. So there are some aspects that might surprise me and creep up on me. But things will be fresh enough where I can kind of connect more dots as I'm reading and remember like key reveals that maybe recontextualize the entire read in a really cool way. So, but if you leave things for many years, rereading again, you could come back and it'd be all new, and then you could wait less long to reread again to have some of the other rewards. But I really do think that Realm of the Elderlings will offer pretty much all of these rewards. So I think that will be a very special reread when I get around to it. But really, if a book could offer any one of these rewards for me, I think it'll be worthwhile to reread when I'm in the mood for that. And so yeah, if you're in the mood for a reread, don't be hard on yourself. Just give yourself the fun experience, the comfort of a reread, and sometimes it could be a completely new experience as well. So yeah, in the comments, let me know any of your great reread experiences, and if there are any other kind of rereading rewards that I didn't think about to mention here, I'd love to hear them. And yeah, I'll catch you later.